Welcome to worship with the Unitarian Universalist community of Charlotte. I'm Eve Stevens, one of the ministers of this congregation, and my pronouns are she, her. If you are visiting with us for the first time today, live on Sunday, October 10th, or perhaps sometime in the future, welcome. I'm so glad you made the decision to check us out. If you'd like to get better connected with us or learn more about what we have to offer, reach out to our membership coordinator. Her name is Kelly Green, and you can reach her by emailing kelly@uuccharlotte.org. I encourage everybody to check out the calendar on our website to see a little bit more about what's going on here this week. There's parent group today at 11:15. There's a session exploring United Nations Sustainable Development Goals Tuesday evening, and a plant swap this Saturday, to name a few. I hope you'll head over to our public Facebook page to exchange greetings in real time with one another. For now, all speakers and musicians are masking throughout our Sunday services in an effort to keep one another safe while we're indoors together. I'll head in now and see you from our beloved sanctuary in a moment. Well, a lot can happen between the memorial garden and the sanctuary, and I apologize to you all. I'm losing my voice, and it's already difficult enough with the mask, so I can promise you I will project as much as possible, and I appreciate your patience. For as long as people have been able to record their thoughts for future generations, myths have been crafted and retold. Powerful stories that gather layers of meaning with each generation. Myths have been handed down for centuries to help us make sense of the world around us and the world within us. In an interview exploring her writing process, author Toni Morrison talked about the myths that had been handed down to her as a child. Stories carefully and lovingly preserved for centuries, entrusted to her. There was one that stood out to her most. She remembers it being woven casually into conversation time and again. The way it was told to her, in the days of slavery in this country, there were times when enslaved people, bodies breaking, souls weary, without explanation, would lift their feet from the ground
and fly back to Africa. When she grew up, Morrison read all the stories she could find by formerly enslaved people. Throughout the narratives she read, when a formerly enslaved person was asked, "Did you ever see people fly back to Africa?" Morrison says there was always one of two responses. "No, I never saw any, but I heard about it." Or they said they had seen it. Morrison concludes, one thing that must be said about myths is that there is some truth to them, no matter how bizarre they may seem.
We light this chalice candle to remind us to give thanks for a new day. May the light of the new day encourage us to see the wonders before us and within us.
I'm going to tell you a story now, so settle in and get a little more comfortable. It's a Sumerian myth about the goddess Inanna and her descent into the underworld. The Sumerian people lived between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers in what is now southern Iraq 5,000 years ago. Inanna was referred to as Queen of Heaven and Earth, a complex and powerful goddess. Her power extended into many realms of life, most notably love, fertility, war, justice, and wisdom. The version I'm drawing from was created by a collaboration between translator Samuel Noah Kramer and storyteller Diane Wolkstein. The first line of the myth reads, "From the great above, Inanna opened her ear to the great below." Inanna had decided to journey into the underworld. She was determined to see Ereshkigal, goddess of death, queen of the underworld. The underworld was the one place in existence Inanna had never been and had no knowledge of. In preparation for her journey, Inanna gathered all the symbols of her power: her crown, her necklaces of deep blue beads, her royal robe, a shining balm that she wore around her eyes, a breastplate, a gold ring, and a lapis measuring rod. She dressed in her finery, the trappings by which people saw her and knew that is Inanna. Ready with her armor for protection and the trusting measuring rod that she used to make sense of the world, down she went into the great below. She arrived at the outer gates of the underworld and knocked loudly, bellowing in a fierce voice, "Open the door, gatekeeper. I alone would enter." Nedi, the chief gatekeeper of the underworld, asked, "Who are you?" "I am Inanna, queen of heaven and earth." Nedi looked her over and said, "I have to wonder, if you are truly Inanna, why your heart has led you on the road from which no traveler returns." Then Nedi, chief gatekeeper, went to tell Ereshkigal, queen of the underworld. He said, "My queen, a maid as tall as heaven, as wide as the earth, as strong as the foundations of the city wall, waits outside the palace gates. She has gathered the symbols of power and has them in her possession." The queen of the underworld commanded Nedi to bolt closed the 7 gates of the underworld and to only allow Inanna to pass through each after giving up one of her possessions. The goddess of death said, "Let the holy priestess of heaven enter bowed low." Sure enough, at each gate, Inanna was told to give up one of her possessions. Every time she asked why, she was told, Quiet, Inanna. The ways of the underworld are perfect. They may not be questioned. After all 7 gates, Inanna had nothing left in her possession to prove that she was the queen of heaven and earth. She entered the throne room naked and bowed low. Ereshkigal rose from her throne, and as Inanna went to meet her, the queen of the underworld fastened the eye of death on Inanna and spoke against her the word of wrath, striking Inanna down. Life left Inanna's body. 3 days and 3 nights passed before Inanna's grandfather, the god Enki, at last took some dirt from under his fingernails and used it to bring to life 2 holy beings, neither male nor female, and instructed them to bring Inanna back to life. These holy beings descended into the underworld. When they entered the throne room, they found a strange scene. Nearby Inanna's lifeless body, they found the queen of the underworld, the goddess of death, lying on the ground, moaning with the cries of a woman about to give birth. As she cried out, "Oh, my inside," the beings joined her cry. "Oh, your inside," they said. "Oh, my belly, my back, my heart," the goddess cried. And the beings joined in empathy. "Oh, your belly, your back, your heart." The queen of the underworld was deeply moved by their empathy and kindness. Her pain ceased for a moment, and as she caught her breath between contractions, she offered them anything they wished. They, of course, asked for the body of Inanna. It was given. They sprinkled the water of life over the motionless goddess. Slowly, slowly, Inanna awakened. Slowly, slowly, she made her way to the great above. She was different, newly alive. Now she carried with her the powers and the mysteries of death and rebirth. She saw herself and the world with new eyes. Elaine Mansfield writes memoirs. Through her writing, she explores the intricacies of relationship and how we humans navigate change and grief. In one essay, Elaine Mansfield tells the story of her husband Vic's cancer diagnosis. After receiving the news, Mansfield and her husband sat waiting in an examination room. The hum of the lights and a sterile white glow folded in around them. It was disorienting. Mansfield could hear the sound of her own heartbeat in her ears as she tried to keep her voice even and steady. Mansfield writes, "I had arrived in the oncologist's office armed with my notebook, my list of well-informed, rational questions, my suggestions, and my fierce resolve." In spite of her careful preparations and fierce resolve, Vic received a terminal cancer diagnosis, and the life she'd known began to come apart at the seams. Mansfield was pulled deeper and deeper into the possibility and then the inevitable reality that she would lose her husband. "As long as Vic lived," she wrote later, "I knew my position in the family, in the community. I knew who I was." After Vic's death, Mansfield descended deep into her grief, down and down. And as she did, she lost parts of herself along the way. After his death, she says, "I lost my role as wife, partner, and lover." She had been a women's health counselor, but could no longer find motivation to work. For months, she was stuck in a blur of monotonous, difficult, listless days. People came in and out of her home, bringing food, folding laundry, sharing memories. Slowly, slowly, life stirred in her again. Slowly, slowly, she recognized her own experience in others. Friends shared their own stories of grief, of losing and regathering parts of themselves. Slowly, she found her way back to living. And as she did, a new creative energy flowed through her, unlike any she had known before. Story after story poured out onto the page. She emerged from the depths, seeing what she hadn't seen before. Overcome with the desire to share with others what she now knew about what matters and what doesn't, about fear and finding a way through it, about gratitude for ordinary days. Author and activist Janet Mock was born as Charles Mock. Assigned male at birth, she was the third in her family to receive the name Charles, following her grandfather and her father. It was a heavy name to carry. As a small child growing up in Hawaii, Janet sensed another world inside of herself. Janet's kindergarten best friend was a little girl named Marilyn. They lived in the same 2-story building in Kalihi public housing and spent most of their time together. One day, they were lying outside in the grass, playing truth or dare. When it was Janet's turn, Marilyn dared her to steal her grandmother's muumuu from the clothesline, put it on, and run to the park across the street and back. Janet accepted the dare. She slipped into the muumuu, a dress much too large for her, and started to run. Almost immediately, something started dancing deep inside the little boy named Charles. An aliveness woke up and laughed. Charles was suddenly so aware of the secret of legs hidden beneath the cloth, the way hips moved, how delicate feet appeared peeking out where the colorful hem touched the ground. That same aliveness withdrew as quickly as it had appeared, crying out in shame as her grandmother discovered the scene, yanked the muumuu over the little boy's head, and spanked him soundly. As she grew older, this secret world, this hidden world inside the boy named Charles, became more and more vivid. And the world around the boy named Charles grew dimmer, harder to recognize, harder to move through. Her father's anger over his son's quote-unquote sissy ways cut deeper. When Janet became a teenager, she realized there was no turning back. She could not live as Charles. She turned inward and journeyed downward, down and down. As she went, she let go of the baggy Ninja Turtles t-shirts and started wearing lip smackers, necklaces, and snug jeans. She guided her voice to a new octave. She let go of he and him and his. It was scary, thinking she might have to relinquish the protection of her family's love as she went. Scary to set aside the armor of social acceptance and approval. She journeyed downward, down and down, until Charles was gone. Her family grieved his death. And then slowly, Slowly from out of this ending, a space was made for new life. Janet emerged, awakening little by little. Cousins and neighbors, friends, and some family began to see her, to know her as she was. Slowly, Janet began dressing, talking, living as a young woman, emerging from the depths, newly free, newly alive. At one time or another, each of us has lived this story, traveling to the great below and back. We too have descended at one time or another into an underworld, giving up something precious and shiny on our way down, relinquishing some protective armor, some certainty we had thought would see us through, and then being suspended there in the great below for days, for a season. And there in the depths, even as we bear witness to an ending and grieve what we have lost, there are labor pains too. A beginning stirs. New life is born, and slowly, slowly, we make our way upward. If you are one among us in the midst of descent, if you are waiting and have been waiting in the depths, keep faith. If you are just awakening, looking upward, sore, weary, keep faith. We emerge slowly, but we emerge like those before us, carrying different possibilities, seeing ourselves and the world around us with new eyes.
My name is Sage Brooke, and my pronouns are she and her. This is a reflection on my experience of a personal descent from the great above to the great below and back. As the myth goes, the goddess Inanna descends to mourn, and as she descends, she's forced to give up all her symbols of her current identity and understanding, and experiences a rebirth. So, like the goddess in the Sumerian myth, I too descended to a very dark place in my life in order to gain wisdom for a rebirth. One might think the recent death of my husband, Dale, would be the theme of my reflection, but there was a much darker period of my life that I want to share. I had been married to Dale for 23 years when I found out he was gay. Dale had gone to a humor workshop, and I found a journal that he had left open on his desk. The first words I saw were, "I can't believe she doesn't know," accompanied by a photo of a man. I descended to a depth of despair I had never experienced. I always knew he was grappling with loving himself and had been in counseling for years, but I never knew that homosexuality was the major issue. My life was forever changed. First, there was anger, rage. I screamed and yelled at no one. My daughters were all gone for the weekend, so was my husband. How could I have not known before? What a fool I was. What's to become of us? I went outside of my house in small-town Riverview, Florida, and I ran. Very different experience for somebody who had never run in her life. I needed to physically exhaust myself before I cleared out all my belongings out of our shared bedroom and moved into the bedroom of my college daughter, who was away at the time. I just knew my marriage was over. How can we still live in the same house? I spent hours rereading my journals. I had always kept a journal from the time I was a teenager. I was looking for clues that I missed about Dale's sexuality. I made an appointment to see a therapist, one of the healthiest things I did. I went to the university library, no internet Googling in the 1980s, and I got literature about homosexuality. I found books about gays coming out of the closet. I read some of the earliest books written about marriage between gay straight couples. As much as I still loved this man, I felt we could no longer stay together. Counseling helped me define what was essential for me in a marriage, and monogamy and honesty were at the very top. So it was obvious to me we needed to separate, and Dale also needed to tell our daughters and family members. I didn't want to take the blame for our separation. Those were very difficult conversations. But I'm so glad this was done. It allowed both of us to stay connected with family while we lived apart for more than 3 years, and we never divorced. So how is it that we continue to stay married? We spent hours writing to each other when we couldn't talk. Too many tears from both of us. Separating saved our relationship. Staying together for the 6 weeks after the great revelation was extremely difficult for both of us. I avoided as much contact with Dale as possible. I worked longer hours. My work was therapy. I was a midwife already, and fortunately I loved my job, and now I worked overtime. I spent time in the nursery holding babies to get my cuddling in my life. I had a few colleagues with whom I felt safe sharing my story. They offered me a lifeline. They helped me on my new single journey. I got 2 exercise partners and joined the YMCA, a great way to lift me up physically and emotionally. I was invited to share meals with these friends. My church friends, I was part of a small women's group. That was my other lifeline. Another woman in the group was struggling not with exactly the same issue, but she was separating from her husband. So, she needed a place to stay. I had an extra bedroom. So then we made a journey together, my friend Connie and my last daughter at home, to move together into the city. We lived in Tampa, and we had more housemates. Midwifery students needed places to stay. I had more extra bedrooms. Even one of my daughter's classmates needed a place to stay. So our house was filled with women, girls, and occasional male guest. Quite a transition for me, but there were still tears. I missed having Dale in my life. We continued to talk frequently. We saw each other in church. Yes, we continued to attend the same church. And that was because it was an important part of our lives, our spiritual and our social lives. And our church friends knew about our situation. It was strange, yet comforting. I began to host meals in my house and had friends over and colleagues over without Dale being the center of attention. My anger got turned into activity. I took a huge chance to spend a month in Guatemala by myself studying Spanish. But I still miss Dale. We started spending more and more time together. We started traveling together. We were trying new things like kayaking and riding in a hot air balloon. I guess it was like dating again. Dale planned a 25th anniversary party for us at a famous Greek restaurant. As proud as I was to have him do this, when the night ended and both of us returned to our separate households, I cried all the way home. Can we keep going on like this, living apart and yet still loving each other? So now jump a year forward. We're still separated, and I am offered a new job in Gastonia, North Carolina. The big questions are, do I invite Dale to come live with me, go with me? And is monogamy still the first thing on my list, or is love and friendship more important? Would I want Dale to be monogamous with me? Definitely yes, but it was not my most important value now. And ironically, in Gastonia, and we did move together, a P flag, if you don't know about that organization, it's Parents and Friends of Lesbian and Gays, and I was a friend of a gay man. They were meeting in Gastonia at the local Episcopal church. That introduced me to a world I never knew existed, and to an even newer world that was formed during the time we lived in Gastonia. I was now called the straight partner in a mixed orientation marriage. Actually, it's called a mom's group, MOM. And that introduced me to activism and friendships in a way I never expected. I was the first leader of a straight spouse support group before it actually had that name. History in the making. The group still exists and meets monthly on Zoom with a new leader, I passed the torch when technology was the only way we could communicate. So, to end this very long story, yes, I hit bottom, but I was reborn over time through counseling, journaling, which is my preferred form of prayer, friendships, work, and I'm still in the process.
In community, we hold in our prayers our shared Mother Earth, mindful of flooding and drought and fire, deforestation and more extreme highs and lows in temperature. We send our love outward into the web of life. We hold in our prayers the devastation of marine life off the coast of California following the oil spill there this week. And to the people of Alabama who have lost loved ones, livelihood, and homes in the flooding there this week. Here in our own congregation, we hold in our prayers Bill and Carole Gay and their family as Bill and Carole both recover from an illness. We are celebrating the recent marriage of Lincoln Baxter III to Carlene Mayfield and extend congratulations to both their families, including our members Lincoln Baxter II and Helen Fowler. We're sending love to Mary Ellen Brooke and her family in this time of concern for the health of her father. We hold in our hearts John and Mary Lee and their family as John recovers from a recent hospitalization. We hold in our prayers Leo Nielsen and his family, his brother Maddox, his mom Bryce, and his grandmother Lynn, as Leo recovers from surgery this week. Whatever celebration or sorrow you carry with you, may you feel held by the love of this community.
I offer you these words for our offering. Give thought to what you have to offer this community so that we may grow in our ability to enrich the lives of not only our members, but our neighbors as well. Thank you for giving generously of your time, your talents, and your financial resources.
I invite you to become more aware of your breath, to deepen your breathing, feel your feet on the floor. Let the tension leave your shoulders. And as you breathe, I offer you this meditation by Teresa I. Soto. Where is life sending you? Here, now. Don't flinch. Where will you go? Is life calling you to come closer to the grief around you? Not with words, but with empathy and kind silence. Sometimes there is no fixing sadness, and we must instead weather it. But together, we make the journey much more possible than alone. Where is life sending you? Go where your heart pulls you. Catch up to that insistent call to the thing that waits for you, the soft place where your talent can rest and your joy bubble up. There is somewhere you can be, a yes for you from the universe. Whether your task today is to work or to heal, to rest or to play, it is time to go where life sends you and be who you are meant to be. Amen. Be well and reach out when you need us.